getting this interview out to some of the high school track athletes. So tell us a little bit, how did you start running in high school? I mean, a lot of people kind of get talked into it or really don't know what they're getting into. I think you, if I remember correctly, and I could not be 100% sure, didn't you start playing out soccer or something?
Soccer, yeah, soccer was, I would say soccer was number two. Swimming was really kind of the dominant pre-high school activity. So I would say that like the combination of those two sports was kind of my really, in retrospect, I'd say high level training going into high school. I mean, I swam on a pretty good club swim team, and I was doing 2-a-day practices by 8th grade, and then I also played soccer too, in the spring and fall. So, I had a pretty big aerobic engine, from doing all the swimming, and I would say I was fast enough. I mean, I wasn't like the lightning fast kid on the soccer field, but like a lot of good middle distance runners, I had a lot of hustle. So I was like, I actually played defense. I did do a little midfield, which is sort of the more common middle distance runner position. But I played defense I played defense as kind of like as a midfielder. I would go all the way up the field and sometimes contribute on offense, but I had enough hustle to even get back to be a full defender, because I could just run the whole length of the field and not kind of get tired out. So that was my training, and then but the seeds of the running came like in the gym class mile, where you had to run a mile a couple times a year. And I just thought it was the coolest thing to like see yourself get better. And I can go look back at my mile time starting from the 4th grade all the way up until 2007, where I ran my lifetime best. So that's how it all started.
I mean, you go, it's kind of funny that you say you play defense, because you do have, if I remember again correctly, you had like 47 quarter speed in high school. You could move in that 400-meter run.
Yeah, but eventually I got fast. I had to train really hard at that. And I think that's where the coaching came in. I think Coach Roscoe did just a fantastic job of teaching me how to run fast and setting up my training so that the speed that I had came out. Because like I mentioned, in that lead up, was that I had the aerobic part, and that part I had a pretty good foundation of, but like I said, I wasn't the fastest guy, and so I had to kind of tease that out of myself. And throughout high school, I developed that, so that by the time I got to my senior year, I really honed that part of it. So then I didn't I didn't have a lot of weaknesses, at least at the high school level. Once I moved on to the professional senior national level, everybody is got, nobody has weaknesses, and so like your hair is a little more. But I just said I had to work at it. I had to work at that speed component of it, and I think that was what put me over, that helped me so much, was working on what I felt like was a weakness of mine, was the speed aspect.
Okay, so freshman year, Coach Scott gets you out there. He times you in a mile, your first mile, and as a freshman. Just curious, what was your time? You don't have to give it
first one. The very first one was, I don't remember what my first one was. I know what my PR. I know what I ran at the end of the season.
Okay, so what'd you run at the end of the season freshman
I
year?
ran 4:23 for 1600 my freshman year. But I
Wow.
actually focused more on the 2 mile that season. And it wasn't Coach Roscoe. It was Coach Hunter. The Hunters were my coaches. Joan and Mark Hunter were my coaches my freshman year. And actually, Drew was born that fall, my freshman year.
Wow, that's an interesting fact.
Yeah. So I've, you know, Drew was playing in the long jump pit at South Lakes High School. That outdoor season. And so yeah, but because I had that, like, I was pretty well aerobically developed. They put me in the 2 mile more, and I won the state meet in the 2 mile that season with Mark and Joan. And I ran 9:30 in the 2 mile, or the 3200, and I thought that was awesome. You know, I won the state meet as a freshman. So, you know, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I just kind of started running like less than a year ago, you know? So I was like a kid in a candy store, like, this is the coolest thing ever, you know? And like, you know, it gave me like, just like a ton of confidence in myself to like think that like, hey, wow, like I'm really good at something, and you know, I should keep doing this. You know.
I mean, that's quite amazing. You see that a lot of times on the girl side. You'll see eighth grader, freshman girl, a sophomore girl win a state championship. It is very, very rare that you have a freshman boy win a state championship. And I could tell you there were probably a lot of people that on opposing teams that weren't too happy that this freshman comes along and wins the state championship. And I've been training, 4 years, and he beats me in the first year. So I wouldn't want to be one of those athletes that had my heart setting on winning the state championship in the 3200 or the 2 mile, whichever you ran down there.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure those guys weren't happy, but to look, the preamble to that was my background coming in, and so to say that I didn't work hard going into it, or that I didn't put a lot of work in, I mean, I'll tell you right now, there's some, I can go back and remember just with my face in the pool, back and forth, hours. I mean, I remember Saturday morning practices, we'd get there at 6, we'd be done at like 9:30, at 9, and then we'd go out and we'd run or bike and do stuff, and we'd be done by 10, and I'd just go home and just sleep, take a 3-hour nap, because I'd just be totally wiped, and so like for me to go out and do 3-4 times a mile, took 30 minutes of hard stuff, that was like a step back for how much work I did going into my freshman year. It was like, I was pretty hard mentally. I knew how to it taught me how to work hard is what I felt like it did. And so I just transitioned into running. And so I didn't see the results until a little later. So
Well, one of the reasons why I asked that question was, a lot of young athletes that may have talent and are gifted don't realize, even if you have that gift, and you answered it perfectly, is you still got to train even at that level, because your talent doesn't always take you as far as you want to go. It involves a lot of hard work.
Oh, definitely. Well, here's what you're right. Totally agree with that. But I kind of like to add to the terminology and say that part of the talent is the work ethic part of it. That's part of it. Your ability to apply yourself and put the work in. So like there may be somebody that has like these physical the muscular part, or the like the muscles below the neck, I'd say, but then your brain is a muscle and your mind is a muscle too. And so you have to harness that talent inside of you and nurture that ability to be disciplined and work hard, the work ethic part of it, so it's important to recognize that and recognize that even if that part of it is undeveloped, just like your glutes or your abs or your cardiovascular system might be a little bit dormant, you can train and strengthen that part of your brain into just train that part of yourself, and increase your ability to work hard. So this is a little kind of a different perspective on like what those words can mean.
Okay, you finish your freshman year, you're state champion in the 2 mile. Summer comes. How do you set your goals? Who set the goals for you? We know your sophomore year, you had an outstanding sophomore year, especially at the end of the season in the mile. I believe you broke the sophomore national record in the mile that year.
Sure.
How was the summer? Who set the goals, and what did you try to accomplish going into the season?
Well, I was still holding on to swimming. I was still holding on to the swimming part at that point, because I put a lot of time into it, and I still had some goals that were lingering from the swimming. I didn't run indoor my freshman year. I swam that season, and all of my lifetime PRs from swimming from that season. And so that summer, I even though running, had clearly come into the picture, I gave it one more summer. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it one more go during the long course season, and just see if I can continue to improve like I wanted to as a swimmer. And so I swam that summer. They did okay, and then in the fall, I wanted to try to do both. I tried to like swim in the mornings and then run in the afternoons. It was a disaster. It was too much. It was too much. And I said, at that point, I knew that I kind of had to commit to one, at least in the kind of medium term. I was like, this isn't sustainable. So just because of the success in running, I said, all right, I'm gonna commit to running, 100%, and just and go with running, only. And which Roscoe had become the coach at that point, and I didn't really set any specific goals except to just get better. My goal was to improve, and and just improve, all my times, mile, 2 mile, cross country, and at that point, that cross country season, I was second in the state my freshman year, but then I won the state meet my freshman year, or my sophomore year. But the way it happened was really the big turning point, because like I said, I just wanted to get better, and so like the goal was to just continue to improve, but to improve on a second place finish at the state meet when the guy that won he graduated. It was Pat Conway, who ended up going to Notre Dame. So how do you improve on that? Well, you got to win to get better, right? But with about 1,000 to go, I was not winning. A couple guys had pulled away, but I just dug down deep, and those guys kind of kicked a little too early, and I ended up coming back on them and winning it. And you can ask Coach Roscoe. That was it was a turning point. That was a big turning point for me because I committed to running, and I kind of had a little bit of adversity, where where I had to kind of fight. It didn't just fall into my lap, and then that's when things, my commitment level was higher than it was before. I ran indoors, and by the time I finished indoor, I think I'd run like 4:14 for the mile. And so at that point, I'd already taken off that's over 10 seconds from my previous mile time. And Coach Roscoe, we had talked about how even though on the surface, it looked like I was a distance guy, we kind of made he wanted to develop my speed and kind of go from the bottom up. And so that's when, mile became the event that we wanted to focus on. And it, just because we knew that we could always move up, and so we focused on that. But then when I started to succeed in that event specifically, then I kind of found my place, so to speak. And he just continued to nurture that because he recognized that seemed to be like a natural event. And then I had another season, outdoors of, commitment and development in what turned out to be my natural event. And then by the time outdoors finished, I ran 4:06, and this fairy tale was continuing to happen in my life. And that part's a little more well documented because then I broke a Jim Ryan record, and I got to go visit Jim Ryan in his office in Washington. It was then I'm like, whoa, now it's really getting weird and crazy. So it and the commitment to just get better was still there. That was always still the underlying motivation, was hey, let's just get better. Let's just always try to keep doing the best we can. And it just seemed like when I did that, it always turned out pretty well.
You run 4:06.94. You break Jim Ryan's record. Fastest sophomore record. And now you got to get ready for junior year. And you got to be thinking going into your junior year after a 4:06, man, breaking 4 is possible. And it didn't happen till senior year. What happened during the junior year? Because I know, every athlete knows 4:06. I meet Jim Ryan. I got a shot at 4 minutes as a junior.
Exactly. I mean, you thought the same exact way that I did, right? And so, but here's what happens. Here's what happened. The pressure entered. The pressure, and I learned hard lessons that junior year on how to perform under pressure, or not perform under pressure, right? And I put it, because at that point, you're right. I was like, wow. I mean, I have a legitimate shot to break 4 minutes in the mile as a high schooler, and I just wanted to do that, and I just was willing to push myself, and the mistakes made came more once I got to the outdoor season, because I as I learned more about running, I got caught up in a little bit of chasing the training log, because I I was getting more into running, like, oh, I'm supposed to keep a training long. And, I was tracking my mileage a little more, and I kind of got into the more kind of runnery talk. And the mistakes happened when I started to do a little bit of extra stuff outside of practice. And there was a couple weeks outdoors where we had built up to where I was getting really close to hitting 50-mile weeks, but I wasn't quite there. And I was like in the upper 40s. But this kind of, I just had this desire to kind of hit that, to kind of say that I did it, and so in order to do that, I could see that I was like, wow, I'm not really on pace to do it, So I need to get just a couple extra miles to kind of put me over the top, And so I took it upon myself to kind of add that. And Coach Roscoe he didn't know I was doing that. And so and I got hurt. I got injured. I had this pure performance issue, it wasn't totally debilitating, but it was just enough to like knock me off. Or I had to take a couple weeks off, like in the middle of my outdoor season. And I ran under 4 minutes at Penn on that split, but that doesn't, it's not official, and so it didn't count as like a sub 4 minute mile. But I was doing good. I was running pretty good workouts, but then just a little niggle right at the wrong time, and it really cost me. And so I just learned that lesson and then going into my senior year, I was just that much more just aware of testing myself and not letting like the pressure kind of push me to do things that weren't smart, and so it was a hard lesson, and I would encourage athletes to not do that. Your coaches have, they do stuff for a reason, and some, once you get to like to where there's pressure, sometimes, holding you back is good, because I was willing to go to the well. I was that part had it was the other, mental toughness part of being tough enough to not do something, not tough enough to always do something.
Well, you learned a valuable lesson. You learned one, hey, I better make sure I listen to my coach and do exactly what he wants me to do, as all athletes have to do. Is, hey, you know better, you've experienced it a little bit more, you dealt with the pressure, you're going into senior year, we know that goal of 4 minutes is still there. You're getting ready for indoor season, and one of the interesting parts, because I was on the other side being the meet director at the New Balance games, for your meet there, not only did I have pressure to perform because we have 5,000 athletes in the meet. One of the things that we always tried to do is we believed in having role models and putting them in the middle of our big high school events. And you got to get to those elite events right on time. So we had the pressure of that. And then we had the pressure of Coach Scott telling us, hey, I don't want to publicize this, that we're going to possibly take a chance at sub 4. For me as a meet director, wow, this is big stuff. We might have the first high school athlete to break sub 4 minutes, but I can't tell anybody about it. And I'm still dealing with all these other coaches. And I know that, we probably started that event right at 1:00 and we had to be there after. And you've been to many high school track meets where all of a sudden the event starts falling behind. And how do you get back on time schedule? Because you don't want to mess up the high school parts. And we don't want to mess you up. And we can't tell the press to come, but we want the press there because this is a big deal. So not only were you under pressure, we also were under pressure, but you were probably twice as bad as I was. So tell me a little about leading up to that magical, indoor race, when did you know, hey, we're definitely going to take a shot at this? And did you believe that it was possible that you can do it at that meet?
I mean, I knew it was possible even going back to my sophomore year. I knew that the possibility of sub 4 was possible. So it was just, one more unique opportunity for me to give it a go. I felt like I'd worked really hard in the fall, to get fit, but gosh, I mean, I didn't know, I was just, I think one of the reasons why looking back, why I felt like I did well in that race was because I just was doing what I was doing, back in the high school, the gym class mile, which was, sure, I'll give it a shot, just kind of having fun, but like it didn't have this ear of pressure that I wouldn't have another opportunity. It was just like, oh, this is really cool. They're going to let me into this, open race with professional level runners. And so like, well, yeah, maybe like this is a little bit different than anything I've done before. So maybe this can help take me over the top of and do something that I've never done before. So just being in the race, I felt like help was going to help me, so it was, but I still had no idea, just because I knew that it was going to be such a tough thing. Because every time you go out and you run a 59-second 400, and you're like, oh man, that felt hard. I don't know if I can do 4 of those in a row. Like, good luck, Alan. Even when you're super fit. I mean, you just saw Evan Jager on 402. I'm sure he was running really hard and wanted to run under 4 minutes. And that guy's, how good is Evan? It's not a foregone conclusion to just walk outside and do it. So it was, I was this high school kid. We were like, this is great. We're going up to New York City to run this track race. I'm just gonna go run as hard as I can. That's what I did.
I mean, it was pretty amazing. I searched YouTube for the full race. Actually, somebody was video from their cell phone, because we really don't have a full video of that race. But it was interesting, and it's not high quality, but it was funny. At the end of the race, you cross the finish line, and it doesn't even look like you realize what you had done. And I remember we had an old scoreboard up there at the Armory. They posted the winning time, and it seemed like we were waiting forever. And I think, the timing people were probably rereading the video, because all of a sudden 3:59:86 pops up. But it doesn't even look like, for a few seconds after that race, it even hits you at that moment. When do you think you realized, hey, I broke 4 minutes? What did coach have to tell you? What did somebody have to tell you? What just happened?
I had to look at the screen. I mean, I remember looking up at the screen, or the scoreboard. Excuse me, the scoreboard. I have a vivid memory of that. I have a vivid memory of feeling my feet against the bank of the Armory, because I believe that was the first time I'd ever run on a banked track. We actually came up and ran. My team ran in one of those the holiday meet. It was like the day after Christmas, I think. But I didn't run in the meet. I just came up because we were planning on coming back. So I just did some strides on it just to like feel what it felt like, because I'd never done it before. But I remember looking up at the scoreboard and it was like this, is what every runner dreams about, is getting your best time, like improving your time, and to have a goal, like a really concrete, specific goal, and walking out and accomplishing it, it's such an awesome feeling, it was just a coincidence that it happened to be this landmark type of time that everybody can recognize, running under the 4-minute barrier, which has really kind of become the kind of rite of passage for the elite miler. You're not going to win the Olympic Games if you're just if you're a 3:59 guy. I mean, generally speaking, nothing's impossible, but for the most part, you got to get better to compete at the international level. But it was, like I accomplished this huge. It was just like flooded with just like sort of another wow moment that I was accomplishing something pretty special. So,
well, you do this, and you may not have realized it at the time, but all of a sudden you become a role model for high school athletes, because something that everybody considered impossible, like it was once in a lifetime that Jim Ryan did this, and now you come, and you're just like every other runner that has come into the Armory or Icon or Ocean Breeze, and like, this is impossible. And now you see from the point that you broke 4 minutes in the mile, and now, we had at the Reebok / Adidas Grand Prix, they had the Jim Ryan mile, and we had guys finishing 9th place running 4:05. And now every year, not only on the high school level, but on the college level, we have numerous athletes breaking 4 minutes. So that little accomplishment, all of a sudden, everybody said, and anybody watching you or watching that race said, you know what? There's nothing special about Alan. I could do that too. And did you realize that this was going to carry over? What you did was that special?
I actually, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. I can't say that I knew what effect this would have. So I would say I didn't know what really, what effect this would have, what effect it would have, excuse me. But I did recognize the fact that I felt that it shouldn't be as few and far between as it was from the Ryan Danielson LaCory time to when I did it. I felt like it should be done more often. And I guess the reason why was because I was third in that race. I didn't win. Leonard Machero and Matt Holthouse beat me. I didn't win the race. Now those guys were a little bit older, but I also started to wake up to, looking at the international level and saying like, okay, like, all right, I'm not saying that's bad, but how, like, where does that put me? Okay, it's at that time I was the fastest high schooler in America, but what's now? Like what's after that? And I'm looking around and I'm like, wow, like there's some East African that are doing this like it's nothing. How many 340, 1500 meter people are there in the world? I'm converting to 1500. And so I saw that and I'm like, all right, well, this is good, but it should be more often. And so the fact that we now have high school athletes doing it more often, we just saw Leo do it. I guess the next Leo, we got to call him, and it should be, because if we're going to compete at the international level, as a country, we should be having people break 4 minutes as 18-year-olds. I guess I can't expect like tons of them. It is tough. I'm not saying it's not tough, but I'm happy to see that it's become more common. So that way, the level of expectation has risen. Like now we're like, hey, we gotta step our game up. And Drew did that. Because he came in and he did it a couple times. Indoor. I'm like, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Like yeah, you could do it. You just gotta put yourself in there and just go, because when the gun goes off, the finish line doesn't care if you're in high school, college, or professional level. It doesn't matter. That the finish line, it's still the same FAT. Whether it's the same thing. It doesn't discriminate, And so, I guess I never let it do that to me, and so I don't know if that was like something that was missing, and people realize that. I hope that I help change that. But I'm just glad to see that it's becoming more common, and I think that's a good thing, that level of expectation is there.
Well, I always believe if you're able to show an athlete and an athlete's able to perform, it's not impossible. And that's what we really got to teach young athletes, is that, hey, if somebody else did this, you can do this with hard work, training right, listening to your coaches. And you break sub 4 minutes indoors, and now we get to the outdoor season. I'm sure some people are thinking, hey, it was a fluke, he broke 4, but you walk in and you talk about earlier, hey, my junior year, I had to learn to deal with pressure. And here you are, now you're walking into the outdoor mythical Haywood Field that Prefontaine owned all these years, and you're in that race. What's your thought going into it? And could you believe that you ran that fast outdoors?
Again, I'd say I didn't expect to do that. At that point, I had run 3:59.86, which if you round up to the tenths, it's 3:59.9. So I was like, just under 4 minutes. And so for me to go into Hayward Field, and I just wanted to break 4 minutes again, because I felt like I just wanted to get a little better. 3:59.7, I probably would have been pretty happy. So that was kind of my goal, and so I stuck to that. I said, hey, let's just try to get a little better, just like like I said before, going back to the gym class mile. That if that was what it was all about, is just getting a little bit better. And we kept that mindset. There's a whole bunch of races that led up to that point, but we could be here all night if we talked about that. But that specific race, it was sort of the same attitude of, man, I'm just happy to be here. Like I got these professional level guys. Got the world record holder El Garouge, Kevin Sullivan, Bernard Lagat. I'm like Brian Berryhill. The NCAA champion was in there. So it was like I had already won, just being in the race. I felt like I was like, I can't really lose. I'm here. I'm in great shape. I don't think I'm not gonna like embarrass myself here. And so and I had worked up to that pressure, and I had learned those lessons on how to kind of be calm in that situation and use the pressure as a positive thing. And whenever I get questions about like how do you how do you deal with like race nerves, I always say you have to turn it into a positive thing. It's going to draw something out of you that you can't get in practice. So use it, make it a positive thing. Those moments will draw something out of yourself that you didn't even think you could do. And that's what I did. And I was like, hey, here's all this pressure. I'm like, now I might run even faster than I've ever run before, you know, like, and so and that's what I did. I just went out there and, you know, I ran my own race, and, you know, so a ton of it was the fact that, you know, my training was very carefully orchestrated by Coach Roscoe to help to prepare me physically. And you know, I would say there was kind of a backlog of improvement that you hadn't seen, similar to like what happened in like going into high school with all the swimming. I think I was you know, I was ready to run faster than I did my junior year, and so I just hadn't really shown it yet. So you know, coming through at 158, 159 with 2 laps to go, and feeling actually within myself, even a little bit, you know, if you can do that, you know, and know that's happening, just knowing how hard some of the other races had been, I was like, oh my goodness, it was this surreal feeling coming into a lap to go, being like, I can't believe I feel pretty good, you know, with a lap to go, you know. And so just the extra excitement of like knowing that you're gonna do something awesome, you know. And then I just there was a big huge bullet in the chamber, and I fired away with a lap to go, and just laid it all out there. I emptied my gas tank, and, you know, the rest, you know, they have a better YouTube video of that one, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, we got to see that race. It was amazing. I said, what makes it more amazing is not only did you have an outstanding indoor season, you had an outstanding outdoor season, but you also had the pressure of schoolwork. You had the college recruiters, I'm sure, all over you to come to my university. I want you to run for me. And you also had, you know, the agents, I'm sure, were biting at the bit to, hey, I want to sign him. This guy, I want to go professional. And you got to decide, not only are you worrying about training, you're worried about graduation. I'm sure you were worrying about the prom, all that fun stuff that comes with senior year. And you got to make a decision about college pros. What made you decide the University of Michigan? And what made you at that point, or maybe you didn't get an offer to go professional, or maybe you did?
Well, I decided early, so I'd already committed to Michigan. I committed to Michigan in the fall, and, you know, Ron and I got along really well. And I was born in Ann Arbor, and, you know, Ron had this amazing history of developing middle distance runners. Evan, you know, his list goes on. You know, and after I left, you know, Nick and Nate. So that decision had already been made. So I was just really relaxed about it all. You know, and, you know, in terms of professional, you know, that conversation didn't happen until after pre. You know, it did come up afterwards. But, you know, I'd made a commitment to Michigan, and I really wanted to go run at Michigan. You know, it was you know, and I never talked to agents or anything like that. That was just sort of peripheral, you know, just through my parents and coach. We just kind of talked about it, but it was, I just didn't really, that wasn't really my motivation, you know. What happened in the future was for a different reason, you know. But I wanted to go to Michigan, and I already committed in the fall, and so I was pumped about doing that, and so, you know, those pressures were kind of off. And in terms of like school, you know, it was my senior year. I had gotten pretty good grades, you know, and so I wasn't like super stressed about that. I actually did go to the prom my senior year. I skipped it my junior year because there was a race that weekend, and so I skipped it for that race, and that was the race that we tried to run under 4 minutes, but my hip had already started bothering me then. But I went to prom my senior year, and I'd done all my homework, and so I didn't have a whole lot of stresses in my life. Things were going pretty well. So I think again, that was one of the reasons why I think I ran so well. My life was in pretty good order there. And so it showed in my racing.
So now you finish out your outdoor season. You're off to the University of Michigan. You're the big high school hotshot. You get to a team that was pretty good, especially cross country. They had a real good team. They had some good distance runners. You walk into the campus, huge campus, a little different, I'm sure, than your high school. And now there's not somebody telling you what time you got to be home. Not somebody, I'm sure, at home telling you got to study. It's a little bit different in college. How did you handle those first couple of months getting into the University of Michigan?
I would say overall, I didn't handle it well. From a discipline standpoint, I think I found my way okay. I had turned up the focus, my senior year in terms of like getting rest and focusing on nutrition. And so I felt like I was pretty disciplined going in. I think I tried to maintain some of that discipline, I think I would say I made mistakes, but but I think a lot of it had to do with I was just sort of guided in how I was doing it. My senior year, I ate a ton of spaghetti. Like that was like my thing, right? I did all the time. I tried to recreate that at Michigan, and it was just a little bit more temptations. It was a Subway underneath the Union, and I probably got a little too many Subway cookies. So I learned some nutritional mistakes that I think I made, and then also I think I took I tried to have the same lifting program that I had at South Lakes, and I tried to maintain that at Michigan, and I think I made some mistakes there, and Ron and I didn't get on this. We didn't get on the same page with that. Overall, I think the pressure got me, and so I think that was a big thing, and I think a big some of those peripheral things there was mistakes in, but I think that what the pressure got to me because I tried too hard to make every single workout like a home run. And Ron tried to hold me back, but it was real hard because I just had this immense pressure because, after pre, it was like it was like, whoa, I like better be like Superman every time I walk out the door, or else I'm not going to live up to that, And that was where I just, I pushed too hard too many times, and I kind of survived. I would say that by the time cross country went pretty well, but I just had pressure to do something crazy, amazing to beat that every time, and it just wasn't going to happen, And so I ended up getting hurt, in the winter time because. After cross country, I tried to come back, and getting back in shape. I just after cross country, a little break. I tweaked my Achilles, and then I was just a mess the rest of the year. At least in my mind. In retrospect, I still, if you look back, I did pretty well. If I just had a little more patience and realized that, hey, you're doing pretty good. I got fourth at the NCAA 1500 as a freshman. That's amazing. For me, it was just like, I had this huge pressure, and so it felt like a disappointment to me, and it was just really tough for me to kind of deal with that pressure, you know, and it took me a whole another year to kind of get through that. So again, it was just learning that lesson of how to deal with the pressure. So um, so yeah, I mean, I would say it was tough. It was not an easy road.
Well, it was interesting going through your freshman stats today, because I thought your freshman year wasn't that great. And then I looked at it going, wait a second, he actually had a pretty good freshman year at the University of Michigan. When you made it through the year, but you decided to turn pro, how did that all come about? That you're now going to be a professional? Who made that decision? How did you make that decision? And how did you tell the coach, hey, I'm not returning?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in my mind, I felt like it was a disappointment. You know, and if you look back, it was I did very well. You know, I was sort of, for lack of a better word, I was sort of a spoiled brat for not thinking that I had done well. You know, and not you know, I sort of took it for granted how hard, you know, competing at that level is. You know, and so I wasn't really grateful for having that level of success. And so when I went home, I felt like I needed to be back in that environment. So that was, you know, I was sort of retreating back to, like, I guess, my comfort zone, where I felt like I was like, hey, well, where did I succeed the most? And that was when I was living in Reston and training with Coach Roscoe. And so that's what I was searching for. You know, I still talk to Ron to this day. You know, I called him this summer, and we were talking. You know, I'm a coach now, and I'm like just talking to him about coaching stuff, and you know, and I see now, like, how he does, how he did things, you know, and I have a little bit more perspective. And so, but I was really, like, immature, and I had a lot of pressure, and it just it got to me, and but you know, the story goes, I went home, and I decided I want to be back here, and so let's try to find a way for me to be back here. And there was no real practical scenario where I could still be in the college system, you know, and have that sort of scenario come to play. And so we started, you know, the conversation about turning pro came up, and it said, hey, let's, you know, this opportunity sounds like it's going to be there. And it was at that point that I decided that I wanted to reach out and contact an agent. And pretty quickly I found Ray Flynn, and decided that Ray was going to be my agent, you know, and you know, that's where that whole the professional part of it started, you know, and you know, and at that point, once you kind of go down that road, you kind of can't go back, you know, because because NCAA regulations, you know, you got to kind of commit, and once you commit, it's kind of a done deal. And and it happened, you know, and you know, Ray did his job, and you know, I signed a professional contract, and I at some point along the way, I don't recall when that conversation happened with Ron, but you know, I told him that I wasn't coming back, you know, and you know, yeah, I mean, that was a bummer, you know, and that wasn't like a fun thing to do, to kind of not come back, you know, and kind of, I guess, give up on that part of my running journey. So and you know, I think that it took me a while to kind of, like, I guess, heal from that kind of experience, and you know, and not you know, not following through on that. So and so yeah, it was a tough transition for me.
Well, we can go on and on about your professional career. You had a lot of highlights. you had a lot of tough times. But one race, and I have to get this in, is one race that stood out to me, I guess, because I was up close in person again, was you running at my stadium, Icon Stadium, at the Reebok Grand Prix. You ran amazing that day. You beat Bernard Lagat, who you first met back at Prefontaine and ran against him. You run 3:52.93, out kicking Bernard Lagat the last 100 meters, which is not an easy task whatsoever. And I watched that video 2 or 3 times today. It didn't even look the last 300 meters, the last 200 meters, down that final straightaway. It didn't even look like you were running. It was unbelievable how much you had left in your tank from my view. One of my takes is you always tend to run really well in New York City, or you just tend to run really well in front of me. So maybe it's a mistake you made coaching, but tell me a little bit about that race.
Yeah, I mean, it was similar to the pre my senior year. Yeah, I you know, with going into, you know, the first 3 laps, I just felt, you know, surreally good, you know, like I felt within myself, you know, which is very rare, especially at that high of a level, you know. And I guess what happened was my expectation, you know, was that the pace was going to be faster, you know. And I did so much training, you know, to be able to, I guess, sort of survive trying to run, I don't know, 3:48 pace, you know, to run under 3:50 for the mile. And so, you know, when you come through at, you know, 2:58, I guess it was something like that, you know, right around the same splits as what at pre 2:57, 2:58. I felt good. You know, you're right. I had a lot left. And I remember thinking, I was like, somebody doesn't go. I mean, this is going to be a crazy last lap. You know, these guys, we're going to be running, you know, and I was just fully prepared, you know, just preparing myself in my mind that last lap, be like, if I feel this, you know, I feel good. Somebody else is probably going to feel, at least somebody else is going to feel pretty good. And so, and I was just patient. And then, you know, the surreal feeling kept on going until the last 100. And when I was like, okay, clearly I can finish 100 meters and if I feel good. And I was just able to, you know, I just let it loose with 100 meters to go, you know, and then it was like I was doing like a stride, or then I felt like I was doing like a 100-meter sprint, because I was able to stay in the aerobic zone. I wasn't too far over. So it's like that was just one of very few number of races where I felt within myself going into that late in a race. So, but if I had known that I'd be able to close like that for every race that you showed up in. Come on, you should have told me this.
Well, it was just amazing that you were able to perform every time I got to see you. So I found that amazing. What I find is even more amazing is in some ways you're kind of following the route that I took. I ran all high school, college. When I got out, or actually into my senior year in college, I decided I wanted, by default, I'm going to get into coaching. And I started out as a freshman coach, coached through high school, had some national championship relays, state champions. I went on, coached at a small Division I school, Long Island University, and then somehow got involved as a meet director, putting on big high school meets, been involved at the Armory, Icon Stadium, Ocean Breeze, dealing with USATF, et cetera. And it's nice to see that you're giving back in the sport. You're coaching, working with your team. So you've gotten to see quite a bit. And I really have 2 questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joe because he's been waiting patiently to ask you a question. On pretty long. One, how do you like coaching? How do you like being a role model? I know coaching is very tough right now with everything that's going on. Um, and what do you see that we have to do in our sport to make it popular again in the United States? It's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the first part first. Obviously, I love coaching. I told you, we've spent an hour talking about, kind of my progress as an athlete. I at some point along the way, I said, I fell in love with seeing that progress, seeing myself get better. And I was very blessed to be able to do that in a bigger spotlight than a lot of people do it in. But the feeling is still the same for everybody that does it. If you go, you've been you've been a meet director, and so you've how many personal records have you witnessed, like at the Armory?
If I answer the question, I'll give away my age.
I mean, countless. So you said you got to witness some of my greatest races. How many greatest races have you witnessed from other athletes that we don't even know? And those moments are awesome. And I just have this. I love seeing that. And if I can take some of the lessons, the goods and the bads, because we talked about some of the good stuff, but I clearly was not perfect, and I made a ton of mistakes. And if I can take all that stuff that I've I went through, and then couple that with coaching, education, and just experience, and if I can apply that and help every athlete that I come in contact with, and help them kind of get better and experience that kind of the fun part of running and seeing yourself pursue the best version of yourself. I just think that's super cool. I think it's awesome. And that's the reason why I do it, is to help that next person wherever they are to get a little better.
And how I can say you're going to be successful is, I think you hit it right on the note, is that whether it's a track coach or in the working profession, I think the key that you said is, if we can teach somebody from all the mistakes we made, we're going to make the person better. And I think you hit it. I think as a coach, I could see you're going to be successful, because that's what every coach should think, is I take my experiences and I can make somebody learn from the errors that I made.
Yeah. So, but oh man, I guess to answer the second part, how do we make track popular? Gosh, that one, I really, that's beyond sort of, I guess, what I feel like I could contribute. I mean, just to brainstorm. I think that if we, I think the fact that we have the internet is awesome for us, because we don't have to depend on network television or whatever we did in the past. So I think nurturing that is a good thing. We got flow track and mile split, and USATF has their own little network that we can can show races. So I feel like nurturing that is a positive thing. So yeah, I mean, that would be, I guess, my only real contribution, to say, just to keep nurturing the avenues that we have, where we can be visible, and have fans that can actually follow it, because that wasn't there in the past, and I think that was one of the things that I felt like myself, I benefited from, was that I came along at sort of the beginning of the internet era. people were able to find out about track and kind of be fans without having to, watch TV. They could watch it, could follow it on the internet. Now you can really watch it like you can watch football or basketball. It's that easily available. So, yeah, I mean, I know that wasn't a good answer, but that's.
Well, one of the things that, I happened to experience, and I thought it was great, Vin Lagana, he put on Tracktown USA, where they took all the American athletes, broke them up into 4 teams. And what was really unique when they did it at Icon, and as a facility director, he kind of drove us crazy, was we had a 5K road race going on. So for the first time, we brought road racers who had never seen a track and field meet. They were running a 5K. We actually had an elite 5K that started out. You had a 5K finishing on the outside of the track. You had races going on the inside of the track. And you had the hammer throw, which almost wiped out some of our runners, but they had the hammer throw going on at the same time. And they had dunk tanks on the middle of the track, and they actually brought the people down for the miles. So you can imagine how crazy that was, and really got the fans involved. Except it doesn't seem like we have the leadership or the will to create something different and exciting for the sport. Everybody seems to be stuck in the old way of doing things. And we just got to find a new way, because it's a great sport and we want it to survive. We want it to be exciting, and we want to create a fan base.
I do. I have heard that idea come up where you have the road race kind of come into the picture with the track meet, just because you see so many road races have such a big participation in them, and so bringing them into bringing that level of participation where they get to kind of be part of the show, and then you kind of have this elite section of it where you have this road race finish and everybody kind of goes in the stands, kind of having this party because they participated in it. But then during that party, hey, now you watch the elite, sort of the professional level, a track meet, for example, that they can actually watch and be a fan of. I think that's a cool concept. I've liked that. I like that idea. But it always takes some creativity on how to kind of time it and just the logistical side of it. But yeah, I think that to nurture that and kind of bring that along would I think that it could change things.
All right, now you and I can talk track and field for another 6 hours. Joe's been listening to me the whole time, and I know, Joe, you're going to have a few questions, so you're going to have to unmute your speaker there. And why don't you tell us some questions that you might have? You can ask Alan some questions. And Alan, just so you know, Joe is one of the distance runners. Because in a new facility at Ocean Breeze, they were able to start a youth track team that's free for all the participants. They have over 100 youth athletes, every size, shape that you can imagine, going out there giving 150%. But we picked Joe. He's special. So Joe, you ready? Okay, unmute it and give Alan your best question.
How did you feel when you broke 4 minutes in the mile?
I was happy, Joe. I was just so happy. What's your best time in the mile?
Currently it's 5:50.
5:50. Awesome. And you're in the 7th grade?
5th grade.
5th grade, and you run 5:50. You're faster than I was in the 5th grade. Already. There you go. But when you ran your best time, you were super happy, right? Because it was faster than whatever you ran before. It was probably pretty close to the same feeling. Maybe, I think I felt like it was, I knew a lot of other people would be kind of making it a big deal because I knew that it was something that hadn't happened in a long time. Never happened indoors. So I would just say I was so happy to know that, the work that I had put in, it counted, and it got me to be better.
What was your favorite run? Like, what was your favorite distance?
Distance, like to race, or
Yeah, to race.
it was the mile. I loved the mile. I actually, I did a mix of events, from all the way from the 800 all the way to the 10K, even some cross country that was longer than that. But something special about the mile for me, I just gravitated towards it, and it was this event that had so much history behind it, and I could track my progress going back to when I was just getting started. So I think that played a part in it too. It really was the mile. It really was.
What made you choose track over other sports?
I had the most success in it. That was definitely pretty clear. And when I was doing it, I guess I could. I learned. I liked to do it, and so and I could. I guess I could just sort of sense that was what I was meant to do. In retrospect, it was. I think it was God talking to me, telling me like, "Keep doing this. You're really good at it. Keep going, buddy." So looking back at, I didn't put it in spiritual terms like that at the time, but looking back at, that's definitely what was, that's what was happening. Yeah, I was just trying to listen to God's call, and He was telling me, "Hey, keep going, keep going with this." Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What's your favorite event?
The 800.
800. Okay. All right. Okay. Good to hear. I like it. What's your best 800 so far?
235.
235. Awesome. That's great. Love it. So you're a middle distance guy, kind of an 800 miler. Okay. Good stuff. Yeah. I love the 800 too. And when I ran my best times in the mile was always when my 800 was clicking too. I had to have that 800 package. There were times when I ran well at the longer distances, but sometimes when I was having success in the longer distances, wasn't always the same time that I was running fast in the mile. But when I had my 800 going, that meant my mile was going. Fun event, really, really fun. It's fast though. You got to be so fast.
Joe, you did pretty good interviewing. Maybe you should give up track and field and become a sportscaster. Are you thinking about that? Lauren, come on. You got to have a question before we wrap up tonight.
Well, it's hard to get when you're on a roll, you keep going. So I guess just to finish things up, Alan, like if there's one basically word of advice that you can give to the young kids like Joe or high school kids about, just pushing forward and just, like you've talked about, just improving every year and just, working on getting better. What's that advice you would give to those kids?
I would say love the process love the process. Enjoy training, enjoy pushing yourself, because it's a blessing. You won't always have the opportunity to be able to push yourself. Enjoy that part of it, because you'll run faster and you'll have fun doing it. It's really cool to be able to push yourself. Have that mentality, then you'll perform better, and you'll have all these awesome memories to go along with it. So that's the advice.
Thank you. Anything else, Lou?
Anything else, Joe? Well, Alan, I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to wish you the best of luck with your college team. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we have a cross-country indoor-outdoor season this year. I'm dying. I have an empty stadium at Icon Stadium this whole outdoor season. So I am dying. This is probably the longest I've gone without being involved in a track and field, cross-country, road race, anything. So fingers crossed we have cross-country, but best of luck with your season. I'm sure you're going to be successful, and we hope to hear good things from you again.
Oh, thank you, Lou and Lauren and Joe. It was great to be on. Thank you, and God bless you all.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Alan.
Hope I didn't make the questions too tough for you.
All right. Good night, guys. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.